to being a publisher, to writing books, and I'm going to let him do the rest. He's going to give a presentation on book cover design. Joel Friedlander.
Thank you, John. That was lovely. Now, some people may have noticed that I forgot to update this slide. And that sounds kind of rude, shut up and write. But it's actually the name of a group. It's a nationwide group of writers. And there's a very active branch in San Francisco. Mike knows it well, right? And I was down there speaking to them, so I branded it for them and forgot to take the brand off. But now you know something about a writing group in San Francisco you didn't know before. So, okay, how to create book covers that work. We're just waiting for David to dim some of these lights up in the front so that we could see the slides really well. What's the kitten doing on the slide? Why kitten? Who knows why I put a kitten on this slide? Everybody loves it. Yeah, everybody loves kittens, come on. Does it have anything to do with book covers? Yeah, no. But on the other hand, book covers need to attract positive attention, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the book cover. We're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to look at a lot of covers. I've got some that are really, really bad. So everybody wants to see those. Why is that? I mean, it's like a traffic accident, you know, you just can't not look. Okay, so you can read this stuff for yourself. Book covers are really important. You know, I'm a member of the IBPA, the Independent Book Publishers Association, which is a great umbrella group. BAIPA is a member organization. They put out a great magazine called The Independent. And if you read the back of that magazine, every few months they'll run like member news. And it's really common to come across an item like something like, you know, Sue Gillespie from Tucson, Arizona, and, Desert Publishing. I'm making it all up. And we had a cookbook out. We could only sell 700 copies. We didn't know what to do, so we put a new book cover. We hired a professional cookbook cover designer. We put a cover on it. We sold 28,000 copies since we put, you know, and this isn't even rare. I'm not saying it's rare. It's actually pretty common. So the cover of a book, not always, but sometimes it can have a really incredible effect on the sales of your book, and there are good reasons for that, because you're trying to attract the right readers, right? There's a whole universe of book buyers. Could be bigger, but still, there's a lot of people who buy books, but most people only buy books in certain categories or genres, right? That's all they buy. Maybe they buy 2 or 3 different categories, that's it. Go home and look at your own bookshelves if you don't believe it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I made this type as big as I possibly could. Who wants to look at that little type? I mean, we're old. Okay, so there's the kitten again. You don't need that. There's going to be an afternoon workshop in which we're going to critique a lot of covers that you lovely people with thick skin sent in.
What font size is the agenda?
Excuse me?
What font size is the agenda?
What font size? Can anybody answer the question? I can't. I don't know. Okay, this is me. I have a background in direct response advertising. That turned out to be very useful, by the way, when I went into internet marketing. Is there anybody who can't hear me? Because I'm from New York. I can talk as loud as you need me to talk. I was in book publishing. I worked in the book publishing industry. I had my own book publishing company for a while before it went under. I'm a blogger. I run several e-commerce sites. I write a column for Publishers Weekly. I'm a columnist, and I also love to cook and bake. And I'm now into low carb, double chocolate, low carb, wheat-free, gluten-free, sugar-free cookies. That's my next book, by the way. I got 2 books coming out this year. Next one's going to be The cooking book. Okay.
You want to sample?
This is my, you're not supposed to see this. Please don't tell Becky I showed you this slide. These are my brands. My newest one is the Bookmakers, complete book production for authors and publishers. Okay, so I just want to talk about the book cover for a second. You know, a typical book is like 6 by 9 inches, a print book. I mean, that's the most standard size. That's 54 square inches. That's not a lot of space. We're putting a lot of weight, responsibility onto that book cover. It's got to do many things, and it has to do them in kind of like 2 seconds. And this is one of the reasons why book covers are important. Now, here you go. There's a book cover. It's got the title, it's got the author's name. And I kind of wish that people who are doing their own book covers by themselves would stop at this phase and say, is what I'm about to do going to make this better? That's the question, because often the answer is no. It's going to make it worse. Now, obviously you might leap to conclusions about who thinks they know what this book is about. It's a novel. So you could just slap a photo on there, right? This is the typical self-publisher solution. What's a book cover? Yeah, you get a photo, you slap some type on it. Baby, I'm finished. Would you like to see the actual cover of this book?
Yes.
Now that is a book cover.
What's it about?
The subject hasn't changed. It's about a fraught relationship, an asymmetrical relationship. You call it whatever you want. But there's something very unified about this whole look and kind of almost pregnant about it. I mean, it's giving us messages between the meaning of the word and those flowers and the way the typography is completely embedded into the cover design. It's like all one thing, giving you a unified message. Whatever it is you take from it, it's a very clear communication of some type. So, these are the kind of things your book cover has to do. I mean, that's a lot of work, right? It's a big job. You want and one of the most important things is to let people know what kind of book is this that I'm looking at in a nanosecond. You have to, and that's your job. If you're the publisher, like as in self-publisher, if you're the publisher, it's your responsibility to make it absolutely crystal clear what the offer is that your book makes to your potential readership. That's your job. Okay, and let's face it, this is the reality of where your potential readers are going to see your book cover. So right away we could see, and this is really a random kind of screenshot from Amazon I took a couple of days ago. And is there a cover here that is obviously completely failed? Which one? Yeah, the one on the bottom. I mean, what is it? You know, when the artist had it up this big on the screen, I bet it looked luscious. But here, it's gone. The title's gone, the meaning's gone, any kind of communication's gone. Coming of Age in Mississippi is doing a little bit better, but the only one here that really succeeds is this one, Let's Get Lost. Very clear communication from the designer on that book. And I'm telling you, this was really random. Okay, so, what genre? The first thing you have to do is let people know what kind of book this is, what genre. Now, here, this is from a traditional publisher. This is obviously a thriller, and just so there's no question in your mind, they put a thriller on there. Now, this is also a pretty, okay cover. Obviously, this is a different genre. This is a cross-cultural love affair, right? So we don't want to have the same kind of book, the same kind of look, the same kind of graphics, the same kind of treatment. Look at the way this type is all smashed up and sliced up. And that's totally appropriate if you're talking about a violent thriller. Here we have very sedate kind of type. This is almost a text base. I'm not putting this up as a great example of cover design, but it does make the difference. So how about the tone of the book? I chose these two covers because they have very similar color palettes, and yet they are completely different books. Like this is obviously a fantasy, epic adventure. On the left, Helen of Troy is a contemporary literary fiction about small town life and a three-way relationship. So, but they give us an idea of the tone of the book. And the tone really relates to the author's voice. It's most important in fiction or literary nonfiction, but you know, as book designers, that's why we actually have to read your book if it's fiction. If it's nonfiction, I could design the book from the table of contents, probably. Yes, sir?
Can you just go back to the previous?
I could do that, John.
So, how does the Helen of Troy, how does that tone tell you what? I'm just
I think
curious
the
as to-
coolness of it and the center layout gives it a lot of stability. It's kind of classical, and that was designed to play off the classical nature of the title. And then there's this kind of cool tone, Ice Palace kind of tone to it that relates to what's happening in the book.
That doesn't tell us anything about the
Tone. This is an illustration of the tone, the writer, the kind of the writer's voice. And telling you what's inside the book is much more important for nonfiction. Now, here are these two examples of books. I'm not putting these out as great examples of artwork, but there's no doubt you could tell the scope of the book. In other words, what does it cover? What's its range of information? Here we got a book of jokes, riddles, and brain teasers. It's telling us exactly what's in the book. So it's 50 things to do when you turn 50. So we know exactly, and this is really important for nonfiction, because in nonfiction you always have to describe what it is that you're covering, and it's very common for nonfiction books to address that by putting a lot of type on the cover. You can see bullet lists on the cover of nonfiction books. It's not that uncommon, because it's really about information, right? Fiction is really about entertainment. I mean, it's completely different. It's a little tough to talk about nonfiction books as one category, because if you think about all the different books that are nonfiction, from very difficult childhood memoirs to books of jokes, riddles, and brain teasers, there's not really a lot that holds them together. But in general, cell copy will help you a lot more on your nonfiction book cover. How about a hook? I like this cover. I think this is a pretty good hook for the readers of this kind of book. It's got a really strong focus point, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute with this big roundel of a window and the moon hanging there and the blackbirds and this woman who's obviously ready to go off into battle. She's just pulling that sword out of the scabbard, and that's kind of a hook. I mean, if you like this kind of literature, you want to know, hey, what's next? What's going to happen
What
next?
about the thumbnail?
This is another hook. This is obviously aimed at a different audience.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps. There's no denying what the appeal of the book is. We don't even care what this guy looks like. His head, who cares about the head? You can read it. And just in case you missed it, it says right here, red hot. Full throttle. Okay, baby. The pedal to the metal. So, but that's a hook. That will hook the reader who's interested in that kind of literature. And I use that. Okay, how about positioning your book in the market? This is something that every editor, every agent, every publisher knows all about, and very few authors ever even think about. And if you want to do a good program sometime, you can run a whole program on positioning your book. We're not going to do that today, but what we are going to do is look at, these are both romances, right? So, but they're not going to go next to each other on the romance shelf in the bookstore, because this one on the left is giving all the signs of being a historical romance, right? It's got period costumes, a period interior, this
Period
type.
position.
Excuse me? Position. Okay, I'll leave that up to you. Now, this is also a romance, but this is a romance set in a completely different time and place, and it emphasizes, you know, the same way. I mean, here's your hero, but somehow the typography is completely different, the visuals are completely different. So knowing where you are in the romance market, for instance, in this situation, will really pay off. You have to know your readers. And there's lots of kind of romances, right? I mean, there's all kinds of science fiction books. There's, you know, every category, genre, or niche has its own rationale and reader expectations. Because people who read those books, they know what they're looking for. They know how to recognize. Another way you can position in the market is with author branding. Like if you become popular, like Vivian is cranking out this series called Six Pack Ranch. Also makes it pretty clear, and look at her titles, you know, Rocky Mountain Heat, Rocky Mountain Heat. I don't know if she's gonna run out of H words, but you know, the interaction between the couples is what she's selling in these books. And she clearly knows that, or whoever designed these clearly knows that that's why people buy these books. Because they're into the relationship dynamics, the stories, the ups, the downs. Oh no, she's going to leave them, she's coming back, whatever. That's what they're buying, that kind of entertainment. So this also helps you position your book in the market. Yes, let's keep. More?
It looks like the same guy.
And different women.
I wasn't at that photo shoot. So the first thing you want to know as a book buyer is, what the heck is going on here? What kind of book is it? And that leads to the question, am I interested? And you have to kind of answer all those questions, and you think of it yourself. Every person here goes to the bookstore, and I'm just using the bookstore because that's very convenient. If you walk into the bookstore, you wander over to a table of novels, maybe you're in the mood to buy a novel. How much time do you give each of the covers on that table? You know, cover, the whole table. Yeah, a second would be a lot. How do they do it? Now, there are a lot. You know, my favorite animation. I have my son helping me do some of my slide decks. I'd like to blame him for that, but he's the senior citizen there. All right, now why do book covers fail? You know, now some people know that I run a monthly cover design competition on my website, on my blog, TheBookDesigner.com. And every month, between 100 and 150 authors send in, or designers send in covers. And we publish them all, every one of them. And the other interesting thing about that is I've been doing it, I think, since 2011 maybe, that we hyperlink all the designers' names to their websites. So if you go in there and you look at a cover, you say, wow, that's exactly what I'd love that for my book, that look. Or if you look through a few months and you start seeing the same person, you really like that cover designer, you can link right to their website. Bingo, you're in business. Great shopping opportunity for people looking for book cover designers. Okay, so I see a lot of disasters. Here's one. Some covers fail because they're simply illegible. This is a problem I run into all the time, and I've written about it, trying to put dark red type on a black background. You know, just stop. It doesn't work very well. How about running the type over the spot in the cover where it's guaranteed to be illegible? Why would you do that? Because you never looked at it. How else can you fail with your book cover? You could fail with okay, quick. Everybody saw that cover?
Yeah.
What genre is it?
Law.
Legal, right. You would be completely wrong. This is a sci-fi book. This is intergalactic attorneys at law. So the sci-fi readers, are they ever going to even see that book? That doesn't even exist in their consciousness. How about this one? Okay. You saw the cover. What's the genre.
Gardening, yeah, right, gardening.
Vampire romance. Okay, I got $100 also that says that is in the author's garden at her house. Yeah? Nobody's gonna bet against me, are you?
No.
I mean, you're like publishing a book and then just putting roadblocks right in front of yourself, you know, and then trying to run at them and just dash your head against the wall. That's not gonna be fun. This animation is screwed up, but these are examples of covers with no hook whatsoever. We looked at, and I'm going to show you more books with a hook, something that draws you in, that attracts you immediately, makes you want to know more. These books have no hook whatsoever. They have nothing to draw you in. I mean, this is a picture of a hand with a cigarette and a bunch of stuff that's hard to read that doesn't actually say anything. And this one says less in every possible way. What's it about? 75 degrees. You tell, I don't know. I have no idea. Why would you, there's no reason to pick it up. I hope that there are none of these authors in the room today, and if there are, meet me outside.
It's a sequel to 74 degrees.
All right, these are graphically or typographically incompetent. I mean, this is about one of the worst examples you can see of what I call the pasted on look. You know, well, we'll get a picture of the globe and then we'll paste on top of it these drawings that Betty did. And we'll put some fancy type. And how about this one, this poor dog? Well, the dog looks fantastic. And I'm a total, I'm a dog lover. You put a dog on the cover of the book, I'm going to like it 99 times out of 100. This is number 100. Look at this poor type. You know, why do that? It's like screaming in pain. Okay, so how about book covers which lack focus? There's no focus. Every cover should have some main focal point. That's because we need to have a lot of clarity in our message. Clarity. Is there any clarity here? If you're going to keep talking over me, you're going to have to be louder because I can get louder than you. So this is obviously one of these situations where the author said, okay, I got to show on the cover the teepee where they first had that thing that they did together, and also the place where he was in jail, and we have to show them kissing, and pretty soon there's so much imagery going on, and then of course the designer throws in all these like ornaments just to really make it completely. What are you supposed to look at? How about this one, Quinn's Undying Rose? I don't know. It's just there. I'd also like to point out that both of these covers display one of the most egregious mistakes a self-publisher can make on their book cover. And in both cases, you'll see Sharon has told the designer to put on here best-selling author. And Tina has gone one better by saying she's an international best-selling author. Now, you're never going to see that on a book cover from a traditional publisher. What you're going to see is New York Times best-selling author, Wall Street Journal best-selling author, USA Today best-selling author, Amazon best-selling author if they're really desperate. But nobody, what does that mean? It's meaningless, empty self-promotion. That is not going to help you. It's not going to sell any books for you, and any book professional. You know, is anybody else a little nervous about how many editors are in the room? Did you notice in the introduction it's like 25% editors or something?
No.
That makes me a little nervous. So confusion instead of clarity, and these are the things I kind of look at when I'm judging or critiquing book cover. You know, is there enough contrast to make this, can we actually see what's going on? And you can see that in a cover like these, this cover actually has very little contrast. It's all in the same palette, all in the same color ranges. There's nothing, like this is the same colors that you see up here. These colors are the same. It is a lot of lack of contrast. So, you can establish contrast with different type weights. So I'm just using type to show this idea now. It's, like something thin next to something thick provides contrast, and that's dramatic. It draws our attention. You can do it, oh, that's cute. You can do it with different sizes. This is the exact same type font, right? Both ones, both size and contrast, exactly the same, but way different sizes and type treatments. So you can create contrast and drama that way. Here's the example of trying, oh, I guess that's gonna fly in there. Color contrast. Now, obviously, black on white or white on black is the maximum contrast you can achieve. We're not usually going to do that because that can be a little raw looking. But keep in mind that as you step away from black and white, you start to lose contrast to the point where you get the old red on black look. And I couldn't do this without making a comment about this book cover. I don't know if you guys know Chris Hayes. He's a TV talking head guy, very, very smart guy. He's probably too smart. And this is his book. I believe it's his first book. It's from a traditional publisher. This is maybe the worst book cover from a traditional publisher I've seen in a long time. And it's really a shame because this guy is a brilliant guy. I'm sure this book has a lot of brilliant things to say. He's pushing it like crazy on his TV show. And that's all fine. But what's the book about? Yeah, it's about race relations, but I don't really think it's just so raw. He's got plenty of contrast, but nothing else. Anyway, just my little, okay. Here's I'm going to show you a series of slides that show a failure and a success at the same challenge. So here the challenge is to come up with a color combination that renders your cover legible, right? That would be nice if people could read it. Here we see a failure. It's not actually, it's nicely composed, but the color combination just completely ruins it. Here's a cover with many of the same elements where the designer he knew that right from the beginning. So he created this whole section, bottom half of the thing here, where he went with this black tone, specifically to make the type pop off the background. Actually a pretty good hook there also. So failure, success, very similar covers, yeah? But a lack of contrast doing it. This one is fonts. You can use fonts to boost contrast. Here's a failure from Chet Dembeck. I don't know Chet, but Chet used this typeface, which is intended to be a text typeface, for his cover. And usually we use text typefaces for text. That's like paragraphs of stuff. And then we use what we call display typefaces for bigger uses or more dramatic uses. And here's a cover that uses really good type fonts to establish contrast, interest, and it really coordinates with the subject of the book quite well. Great. I mean, that tells you everything you want to know about that book, whether you're going to be interested or not, the action, the excitement. And part of that is due to this great type choice they made. How are we doing on time?
It is
I
11:28.
can talk faster, you know. I'm from the Bronx originally.
We have 45 minutes still.
45 more minutes?
Yeah,
Holy cow!
you're
Go
doing
back
fine.
and go a little slower. All right, we already talked about this. Busy backgrounds tend to lose focus. Now here's two books with kind of similar elements and using similar type, but this designer here understands what a book cover is supposed to look like. He's very artfully blended both the darkened area here, the light area, and then went lighter, just the way the designer went darker on the playing card one, to make the type display properly. And it all integrates beautifully. This one is just an assemblage of stuff thrown together with no clarity or focus whatsoever. And we don't like it when we lose focus. Okay, now here's something oh, Quinn is back. This guy won't leave me alone. I gotta put some new covers in here. We sometimes, as designers, we talk about the eye path. And that is, where does your eye go and how does it travel? And a good designer can actually control your eye path as you're looking at the cover to achieve some of his goals. So here we have no eye path because there's no real place to look. If you were to do a heat map of this, it would be like, just random dots everywhere. On the other hand, this design really captures your eye. And the way the designer has done this, obviously this perspective of the dot, the pier going out there, leads our eye right to the horizon and stopped right at the horizon line because we got the things converging and then bing, and right there is what he wants us to look at. That's the point of the cover. These two people standing way out on the end there in this romance, young adult romance, I believe it is. So this is kind of masterfully done to control the eye path of the viewer and to use that ability to make a point about the story that's inside. It's kind of funny about books. Books are a little schizophrenic. If I opened up every one of these books that I'm showing you, we looked at all the interiors, it would be really hard to tell them apart, right? If you went home and started pulling books off your bookshelf and opened them up on the floor, all the interiors, they're going to be pretty much the same. And that's important. We expect that. That's what makes us comfortable and allows us to get at the content. And then you turn them over and you look at the covers and it's all over the place. Every cover is kind of schizophrenic because the interior is trying to stay very quiet so that the author can communicate with the reader. Forget the designer. We're not interested in the designer. But the cover is kind of standing there screaming, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. Right? Totally different
Joel,
interiors and exteriors. Yes, ma'am.
on the one you just had, could you just tell me where I can expect my eye to look at that? I went to the name, I went to the couple, and then I went to the title. But is that the intention when you were talking about?
The intention here was to lead you up this perspective, the receding perspective. So you hit the horizon line, which stops you, and that right there is the subject that the designer wants you to look at.
Why is
But our eyes, we're used to doing this. And let's say I'm looking around the room, it looks like a lot of us have many years of experience in looking at stuff. So this happens so fast, it's actually hard to track it with your conscious brain because it's happening on a much faster speed than that. In the back.
Wouldn't Lindsay be better back underneath the title?
Can you repeat the
Putting what underneath the title?
The author's name.
Oh, the author's
Put it
name.
up there, really stands out in ways.
Right, makes it look like Lindsay Page.
Might have been even an improvement.
Always
Yeah. I mean, look, we can always make this stuff better, right?
Shouldn't covers be as good black and white as they are in color?
Yeah.
That's a very good point. I mean, it doesn't come up so much anymore, but this used to be really critical because we used to sell a lot of books through catalogs. And primarily catalogs, newspapers, stuff like that, then you want to make sure your cover will read in black and white. It has sufficient contrast, which is basically the only thing that will save your cover when it goes to black and white. We don't have that so much anymore, because a lot of the world has become colorized because it's all digital now and nobody cares. But you can see also that if you tried to render this Quinn's Undying Rose in black and white, it would become just a big gray mud bath. Yes, sir.
Maybe you could weave into your presentation a little bit of commentary about the need to provide a book cover that stays strong for the purchase of the book, but at the same time can make an initial strong impact on someone viewing it at Amazon icon size. Because something I noticed about the covers you've shown is that in many cases, even for the stronger covers, they would be pretty much illegible at Amazon icon size. And of course, we sell our books by Amazon these days primarily.
Well, that's why I showed that screenshot of the Amazon search results to kind of cue that in. Like, for instance, in this pair here, if you reduce these down to little tiny postage stamps, you're still going to be able to get this cover on the right. The one on the left is just going to become a blob. Moving right along. Positioning. Okay, you saw it. What's the genre? We're back to the whole genre sweepstakes again here.
Historical
You
romance.
want to see it again?
MCS.
Want to see it again? You can look at it all day. You're not- It's a romance.
Okay.
It's a historical romance. This is a book, obviously a thriller, where the designer has brilliantly solved the problem. And I think this cover would work at any size, but at very small sizes, you would kind of lose what's going on here. But at any other size, this little piece of story element really helps to anchor the whole cover. Very effective book cover. Seb, back to the drawing board. We're still doing genres. Lady Jane's Rebellion. Genre?
Regency romance.
Yeah, but if you just saw this and you didn't know what kind of book it was, yeah, it looks like a history book to me, or art history. Here is a historical romance. I think it's a really good cover. I really like this every time I look at it. You know, I like everything the designer did here. The red dress creates this great texture, background. It's got very good fonts. And plus, the hook is right here. You know, who's she going to give that key to? She's going to give it to somebody. She's going to give somebody that key. Very good. Okay, and we're coming towards the end. Okay, make sure you have a hook. The designer solved the problem. Stuff to read when you're high. This self-help for stoners, stuff to read when you're high. That's really, this accomplishes all of the goals. Right, it helps identify the audience, it lets them know what the book is about, it explains the scope of the book, and you know, even the iconography, this leaf will be recognized by anybody who reads books like this. What I liked about this, I like both of these because I think they both have good hooks. And what's interesting about this, obviously this book on the right, Griffin Hayes, after he wrote Malice, he wrote The Second Coming. And this also tells you everything you want to know. I mean, this is a brilliant cover for this type of book. It's going to be violent. It's going to have somebody who's insane in it. It's got somebody walking around with a The shadow itself is menacing. It's actually very menacing. And here's what's interesting. Both of these covers were done by the same designer. So that's why I always advise people, whatever your budget is, hire a professional book cover designer. Now, I judge thousands of book covers. Am I standing here saying there are no authors who could create good book covers? No, that's ridiculous. I've seen some really good author-designed book covers. And let me tell you, every time I'm surprised. I think, wow, where did they get that talent from? Maybe they're a designer in their day job or something. But they are the exception. Most author-designed covers end up looking something like the ones on the wrong side of the slide. Okay, this is an idea you can think about. What offer does your book make to the reader? Like Arlene showed us her book, she's going to help you recognize wrong words and malapropisms. Right? It tells you on the cover. What's the offer that your book makes? My book says expert advice for authors who want to publish. That's it. I got more covers. We have some time, right? I just got a few. And I just picked these out to demonstrate some different concepts. Like, for instance, this also is an example of, and it's very odd how similar the authors' names are. But these are both, again, romance books of a kind. Ugly Love, I believe, has kind of a mystery element to it.
They look like a romance.
It's a really, no, it's intriguing. How about two different, these are both YA fiction, I believe. One's Western, and you'll notice that the fonts here, all of these fonts are very elusive to kind of Western design. And here, the Girls of Mischief Bay kind of tells you a little story right on the cover. It's going to be a story about these three girls. You can see, kind of guess their age. And even just the word Mischief Bay tells you something about what's going to be in it. All right, now, we've looked at a lot of book covers. Most of them have pictures, drawings, photographs, but you don't need that, and particularly for nonfiction. Nate Silver's book, I thought this was one of the best typographic covers of the year, because the cover itself embodies the theme and the concept of the book. There's the signal and there's the noise, and the signal emerges from the noise. So I think being able to do that typographically was really good. The End of Your Life Book Club. I mean, do you need a picture? This is really good typography. It's not easy to do that. You need skill, but you don't need, I have to have a picture, I have to have an illustration. Now, if you're writing a fantasy book, you probably do need visuals on the cover. But not every book needs that. These were both very interesting. Lunatic Fringe. What I liked about this book was this was done by an artist who actually painted the entire cover, the type, the lettering, everything. So it gives you, you know, even unconsciously, you get this completely unified, clear message from the book cover. And that huge wolf, and the girl running in the moonlight, and the title, I think it's really attractive and a great job.
And her name is really Allison Moon?
Well, that's a question. I have a whole section of my new book coming out on creativity about making lists of people whose names match their occupation. Acronyms. Don't forget. How about this Jurassic Park cover? This was one of the, I believe, maybe the original paperback.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. This was Chip Kidd design. But you know, this is what we used to call, back in the old days, a two-color cover. Right? This only uses black ink and red ink. The paper is white. And it just goes to show that in the hands of a skilled designer, you could create a compelling, interesting design that will really attract readers without all of those, you know, shadows on the type and the, you know, the etching and the embossing and all of this junk that we load up on the stuff, and the glow and the, oh my God, it never ends. You know, Photoshop, please stop me before I Photoshop again. Michael Craig, Chip Kidd didn't need any of it, and still he created this pretty amazing book cover. Now, obviously, there are a lot of things that go into a great cover. You know that, I know that. I've listed some of them here by additional formats. I mean, you know, you've got an ebook cover, maybe you've got an audiobook cover. You know, a lot of the covers of digital products have moved into metaphors now. I'm sure there are many, many people alive in the world today who have no idea why those album covers are always square. Why are they square? We know, because probably some of us still have some of those LPs, right, in the garage. And then even when the CD came out, that had to be round, so that was square covers. Now, you can't do an album cover that isn't square. They kind of won't let you.
Yeah.
So that's our signal. So that's now a metaphor for a cover, in the same way an ebook cover is a metaphor for a cover. There's no cover to an ebook, it's a freaking file. How can you put a cover on a file? So, but the ebook cover, and I don't think there's any way we can change this at this point, is a tall 6x9 type ratio rectangle. That's it. The ebook isn't that shape, but that's our metaphor for book cover. Okay, end of that mini rant. Now, I'm sure this is the end of the presentation, so I'm sure everybody already has a copy of this wonderfully helpful 24-page, highly designed PDF full of links and resources on 10 things. This is a freebie I give away, and you can find it on my website, TheBookDesigner, and it's totally free, except you have to give up your email address. And I think I have one more commercial. Okay, see, that's a nonfiction book cover. Just type. Tells you everything you want to know. It's my book. So, how much time do we have?
You still got almost 30 minutes for.
Where's John? Do you want, we want to do any Q&A, because then John's going to come up and we're going to critique a couple of covers to give you a taste of the excitement and drama of the afternoon session. The hurt feelings, the mistaken identities. Yes, sir.
One, I think one of the reasons why us self-publishers attempt to do our own covers is because we've seen a lot of professional covers here in the last 20 minutes that are awful. They came from the big five and they were awful, and we think we can do better.
Now, most of those bad covers are self-published covers.
I take it all back.
All of them are self-published.
So my next question is
And many of
this.
them are done by the author. That's the recipe for disaster.
So let me ask you this, if I may. In the bigger picture of book design, some people say that the book cover should be followed through on the title page, that the elements of design on the cover should be the same elements on the full title page. It's part of your logo, your branding. What do you think?
Yeah, it's nice when you can do it. I mean, I wouldn't use the word should in that sentence, because that would imply it was some kind of guideline or convention or practice, which it surely isn't. And let's drop back for a minute. You know, we talked about interiors versus covers, but you know, if you look at the books produced by traditional publishers, everything about them, they do a lot of bad books, don't get me wrong. They do bad interiors, bad proofreading, they still proofread, right? Bad editing, bad covers, but they're all done by professionals. That's the, you know, those people working in publishing houses, they're all book professionals, so it does make a difference. Here's the mistake that most self-published authors make, particularly on their first book. That is, they get a design, even if they get a designer, they're designing the book cover to please the author. Oh my God, this is my book. I've been working on this book for 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. You know, I become so affixed, identified with the physical object of the book. This book has, I think the book has to, in every possible way, express who I really am. No, it doesn't stop there. We don't design book covers to please authors. We design book covers to please readers. And that's frequently something very different. I can't tell you how many times I've had an author who wants a book cover, and they say, here's a picture I've had stuck on my fridge for the last 4 years, and I said, if I ever write a book, that's what's going to be on the cover. Well, thank you, but no thanks. Give the designer the picture, tell them your little story, and then leave her alone. You know, she may come up with one cover using your picture, she may not. That's okay. If you're not interested in selling books, forget everything I've said in the last 40 minutes, because it doesn't matter. Just do whatever you like. Make something that makes you happy. If you're interested in selling books, this is a very, very competitive market, and it's getting worse, partly because of people like me and other speakers you have here. We keep educating authors, making them better. That makes for a more competitive environment for you. So, just something you need to pay attention to. Yes?
What about back covers?
Back covers. You'll notice I didn't show one back cover. That's because this presentation is only about front covers. We could call this an ebook cover design presentation, because even though they lack front covers, they even more lack back covers. No, I mean, back covers have, there's not a lot of design work there. It's much more important to understand the function of the back cover. It's mostly to do with print books that are sold in bookstores. I mean, that's mostly what your back cover is going to be good for. I like the fact that on some retailer sites you can see the back cover of the book. That's handy, because that's where the sell copy is on the book, right? Yes, ma'am.
What's the price range for a good designer?
Book cover designer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really a sensitive question, but I will tell you, the price range is from $35, because Mark Coker keeps swearing that you can get a book cover for your ebook for $35. I keep telling him, Mark, you know, book cover designers have to pay their mortgage too. You can't design a lot of book covers for $35. And, you know, keep in mind, if you pay $35 or $50, that's what you're gonna get, right? You can even get book covers on Fiverr now. Does anybody know what Fiverr is? It's a website where people will do stuff for $5 or some multiple of $5. And there's actually one or two really good designers on there, by the way. But there's only one or two that I know of. So the range is, that's the low end. I would say to get a decent cover from a professional designer at the low end, I would say probably around $200 to $300. I would say the better covers we were looking at, because I know a lot of these designers were probably around $600 to $1,000. And there's a lot of designers in the $1,200 to $1,500 range. And, you know, these things, the financial decisions you make as a business person running a publishing company are reliant on a lot of things not having to do with aesthetics. So I'm not going to go into that, but at the top end, there are people servicing the self-publishing community. We're charging about $3,000 to $3,500 a cover. And I know some of those designers, and they do amazing work. If you're doing a book and you really think that book has national distribution written all over it, that's the way you're going to do the book. And that involves many different pieces coming together properly, from publicity to marketing to the way the book is produced and manufactured. Absolutely critical, because you have to have the space, the profit margin in your production costs to be able to deduct the distribution costs, deduct the cost of the manufacturing, and still show a profit. So that has to all be worked out way at the beginning. But if you have one of those kind of books, it might make a lot of sense to drop $1,000 or $2,000 on a cover if it's going to help you achieve your goals. I'm not predetermining this one way or the other. I'm just saying there are a lot of people out there who are patronizing the whole range of cover designers. If I was going to go out today personally to buy a book cover, I would figure on spending somewhere between $500 and $900 personally. I'm selling it to a niche market, right? There's only X number of people who buy books on independent publishing.
More every day?
And more every day, yay. So that has to come into account also. How many books do you really think you're going to sell? Obviously, that book is going to sell. A book on Arlene's book has a smaller market than somebody who's writing romances or thrillers. It's just the way it goes. More questions? Yes, sir.
The ebook covers seem to be going after the devices. The ebooks are the ebook covers are about the devices that people look at them on. They say ebooks have no pages, but we all look at them on a page that's on the device. So it's a little less metaphorical than all that. Would you say?
Well, they have no fixed pages. Like if I say go pay, I read this great passage on a book I was reading on my Kindle. Go look at it. It's on location 713. That's not really a page, is it? The page is a fluid display. It expands and contracts. Like if I go and tap that type size thing and make it a little bit bigger, all my pages are different. Wow, the whole book has different pages now. So we look at them on a screen. The screen mimics a page. There are many, many things the ebook device manufacturers have done to try and convince us they're like books. From the shape of the Kindle originally, there's a reason they made it that shape, that tall rectangle. That's what a book is supposed to be. They didn't have to make it that shape, did they? If you think about it, they could have made it square. They could have made it any shape they want. But they made it that shape, and then when the iPad came out with the iBooks app and that and you could touch it and it would show like the page turning. All of these cues they were trying to provide to make us feel comfortable. No, you know what this is. You've been reading these since you were knee-high to a grasshopper, same thing. Of course, they aren't really the same thing. but, you know, that's unnecessary to get into that, because we're talking about book covers. More questions on book covers? Yes, sir.
The cover of the book is
Part of its marketing shtick, right?
Yes, it's part of the brand of the book.
Okay, so do you, as a book designer, is part of your function to actually come up with the title of the book?
No.
So that part of your marketing, which is an important piece, right? I mean, so you could have, I want to say, schluck, I don't know, pick a word. And then say that's what this book's about. And you then have to come up with a marketable cover?
Well, look, what goes into cover design? Yes, it's very important, the title. Long titles can be very problematic for your cover designer. The shorter the title, the easier it is to make a big impression, like that bound cover you look right at the beginning. B-O-U-N-D, 5 letters. I mean, you could do almost anything with that because it's going to fit on the cover. You know, if you have a long title, that kind of dominates the kind of design you're going to be able to make. But if it's fiction, like I said before, I'm actually going to read the book, or I'm going to read enough of the book that I understand it, I get, you know, the narrative drive and the way the author writes and vocabulary. The other important thing I'm going to look at is who is the market for this book. And then I'm going to go look at maybe the top 100 books right now in that market, because I know they're fulfilling people